Nicholas, how do you say your last name?
It's pronounced Ashill.
Uh-huh. All
Yeah,
right,
Ashill.
Nicholas Ashill. Very
Yeah.
good.
Although Nick is my preference.
Okay, Nick. Very
No
good.
problem.
Well, welcome to our podcast, and thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you,
And
Milton.
yeah, I found you through this group of writers that we published this book about running across America, and it's been a very interesting venture for. It has been very interesting for me. I presume you're having a kick out of it too. But tell
Uh,
me your story. Tell us what you have been doing and your story as a runner. And also, I'm going to ask you about what is it, what is the importance of it in your life?
mm, okay, that's a great question. Well, my story first. I'm probably out of all of the chapters in the book a little bit different in that I completed 80% of the run. Um, More about that in a minute, but I made the decision to run iconic Route 66 in February 2015. My mum died of a horrible disease of the lungs called pulmonary fibrosis, and I wanted to use her death as a way of recognizing her in my life, and also to acknowledge the importance of a particular charity in the United Kingdom called the Pulmonary Fibrosis Trust, which helps individuals and families living with this horrible disease in terms of providing practical, financial, and emotional support in the home. So I'd always been an ultramarathon runner, and with her death, I made the decision I wanted to do something a little bit different, a little bit extraordinary, and I then put a plan in together and started my training program for the next 18 months, 2 years. So my father-in-law, eldest daughter, formed part of that support crew, plus a couple of other friends as well along the way. And I set off on the 14th of May, 2017, from the end of Santa Monica Pier, which represents the end of Route 66.
Yes.
So I ran through California, took about 10, 11 days through the California desert. And having lived in Dubai for 12 years, I for some reason, despite my coloring, my body loves heat.
Uh-huh.
In the California desert. And then that moved on to Arizona and New Mexico, and then through various other states. So I followed historical Route 66. I'd always had this fascination since I was a young kid about this incredible, iconic road, and a lot of American history, of course, is built on Route 66.
Yeah.
So I'd run 3,947.2 kilometers, which was what my watch said on the 2nd of August 2017. So I've been on the road for 81 days. I'd had about 12, 13 rest days in that time. The rest was running, averaging around 54, 55K a day.
Mm-hmm.
I was on US 40, and it was about 8 in the morning. And a dark-colored pickup truck was a dual carriageway going in each direction. So I always run into the traffic for safety reasons so I can see what's coming in front of me. And this dark-colored pickup truck came off the road onto the hard shoulder and deliberately slammed into me at about 100 kilometers an hour. And I knew for a split second, just before it happened, that he was too close and I was going to get hit. And I made the decision to jump over a metal railing, but which I'm glad that I did do for that, but I got slammed on the side. So I was thrown into a ditch. And while I was literally a couple of minutes before, I was on a hands-free Skype call with my wife and two daughters in Cyprus. So my phone was in my pocket. I had my earphones in, and the horrible thing is that they didn't see it, but they heard my screams. So thrown into a ditch. Support crew were eventually notified through a lot of Q&A from my wife, who's an ex-nurse. I was eventually found 56 minutes later. The fortunate thing is, even though the phone left my body, it was still working, and it was through Q&A from my wife while I was in the ditch. She was able to keep me reasonably conscious, and was able to alert the state troopers. So flown to Ohio State University Hospital by helicopter, and then that began the next 4 or 5 months. So I've learned to, I guess, get out of bed through a hoist, and then a wheelchair, and then crutches and a stick. But I've now been back running. 15 surgeries later, I've now been back running for about the last 8 or 9 months, and it feels pretty damn special. So
wow! It is a unique story.
It is, yeah. Wow. I'm planning, was planning is probably the right word, right? To finish the remaining 900 or so K on the 27th of May, but and what's happening?
Oh yeah, now we have to delay all kinds of plans now.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the right thing to do. It will still be there for me, but hopefully, maybe
in what state did you stop the run?
It was Ohio, so Columbus became home.
Okay, and what was the plan end point?
The plan was New York, so it was LA to New York.
Okay.
And particularly, Central Park.
All right.
So I've never been to New York, despite the fact that I'm 55 years of age. I still never got there.
You're the one.
I'm the one, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, very, very impressive, impacting story, because I have been talking to a lot of people that are either beginning or they are doing it or considering, and I coached a couple of people that ran across America, and they are concerned with all kinds of dangers and possibilities, and I keep saying traffic is the number one danger, and by far it's not even close to all the others. If you don't have a solid strategy, and if you don't pay a lot of attention to that, the cars are going to be the problem. And in some cases, it is because people are very distracted, and in some cases because sometimes people are murderers. It's both. In your case, there is no way to know, but it may very well be.
I mean the police, given the fact that the vehicle moved from an outer lane to the inner lane, and with about 50, 60 meters away from me, it sped up and came onto the hard shoulder. And then it hit the barrier. Apparently, according to the police report, it hit the barrier before it slammed into me. That part of rural Ohio, I've subsequently learned, has a big opiate problem. Drugs may have been involved. Don't know. I mean, it's conceivable that the person who hit me has no recollection of it. That's possible. Or equally, I do know, I've been made aware from other people that there are people in this world that will go out and deliberately try and take out runners, which I find really, really hard to believe. But
well, those cases are 1 in 100 million. They are incredibly rare. They exist though, and they make the news, but they are vanishingly rare. Most of the time, it's just people being either distracted or on drugs. Like they may be on Ambien, they may be on on opioids or whatever. Some people are also how's it said? They're sleep deprived. So they may be driving and sleeping at the same time. So that's.
And I guess if you hit an individual, I mean, I weigh about 65 kg. If you hit that person that weight, there's a good chance you're going to know about it. But sadly, this individual made the decision not to stop. I mean, the wing mirror and other parts of the vehicle clearly were damaged. The wing mirror came off. The police have that, but they identify it to a specific vehicle. And let's be honest, that vehicle is well gone now. Anyway, it's sold, buried. I don't know.
And they still found who did it. Interesting.
No, they haven't. The case was closed after 12 months. So they're not actively looking. And I understand that. The police in West Jefferson, where it happened, this particular county, are dealing with far bigger.
No, I'm confused. You said that the person had no recollection. So how? Where did that?
Well, no. I was simply just speculating. It's conceivable he or she may not even know that I was hit, but.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know who that person is. Neither did the police. So.
Yeah. I had to jump out of the road a couple times to avoid being hit, but in this one case, it was more out of abundance of as you say, abundance of care. So the car was too close for comfort, so I got out of the way. But not completely in my line. But in one case it was like I really had to jump out of the way, so because this SUV was coming with half of the car on the breakdown lane, and it kept coming in my direction, right? So I jumped out of the way and I kept looking, and it kept driving half of the car on the breakdown lane. So that means the person was not noticing. It's not like then it swerve or try to get out or in the road or out of the road. No, nothing. Just kept going that way, and I think that maybe it's one of those situations that the person's either sleeping or half asleep state or on drugs or so concentrated, so focused on the phone that the person would not notice anything. So it's and it was a woman. I saw that it was a woman driving, and she, but I can't remember for sure if she was looking down, like looking at the phone, or if she was looking ahead. I don't know. My recollection is not clear. But I remember seeing this woman driving and in big car, big SUV, So if he hit me, he would win for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if I look back, I mean, I agree with you. If I look back at some of the risks that I encountered, in California and Arizona and New Mexico, it was largely rattlesnakes most days.
Yeah.
And interesting interaction with a rather large bull in Arizona, but by far the highest risk was associated with drivers of vehicles. Yeah. So I agree with you. Yeah. You have to be so.
I was afraid of bulls, but mostly because I'm pretty afraid of cattle anyway. I cannot see a cow without getting concerned.
They're big and they can.
Yeah, and the longhorn bull has a reputation of being quite aggressive. Yeah. So as I was going through farms and through the desert, many times, especially from West Texas to Arizona. I was in the open desert, and surprisingly, there are cows out there. And so I went through a few situations that there were plenty of cattle around me, and I was so concerned with that, but had no incident with it. Another concern was stray dogs, and with that I did have a couple of very scary encounters. There were three of them were really close calls for me, and in one, actually a guy on a pickup truck saw the situation, and he put his car between me and the dogs, and that gave me time to keep running. And but if he hadn't seen it, I would have to kill the dogs, and that would be a pretty annoying day for sure.
Yeah. I agree with you. Same thing. Several encounters with dogs, and it was only when traffic came between me and that allowed me to get out. I found in a lot of rural areas, gates of homes would just open and the dogs would just run out. And small dogs, they're, bulldogs, Alsatians, Doberman, breeds that you don't want to mess with.
Yeah, this situation that the guy put his pickup truck on the way, it was 3 dogs. One was like a pit bull, and the other 2 were I don't know the kinds of the dogs very well, but seems to me that they were like Doberman, and one was a big pit bull. So it was definitely 3 deadly dogs out of a house on the edge of the city that the gate was open. I find it incredible, the recklessness of the dog owners. And,
absolutely.
And honestly, if I had to kill those dogs, I would probably bring them to the house and drop them right at the front door, because at the moment, of course, you are very upset, and all my hate, all my energy, everything was directed at the owner of those dogs. I kept thinking, how can someone be that stupid? And it's
but that's it. They don't. I had a few interaction with dog owners about getting the dogs back in, and all I got was just verbal abuse after abuse.
There was one in Arizona that these 3 dogs, some big fluffy dogs. This one was a different kind, but still they are big, and you don't know what the result is going to be. But I was on the opposite side of the road, because every time I see a farm that may have dogs, I cross the road. And so I crossed the road, and then these 3 big fluffy dogs ran towards the road. And I yelled, and the farmer or whatever, there was this lady there, and I said, hold the dogs. I yelled at her, take these dogs. And she said, no, they don't do anything. The dogs were on the edge of the road. There were cars and trucks coming along, and they wouldn't cross the road because there were traffic. But they were trying. They would make a move, but then they would get scared of the vehicles. And I yell at her, if you don't stop the dogs, I will. And she was all upset about that. And I was thinking, how stupid can that be? Because there are only 2 outcomes out of this. Or, well, there are 3. Some dogs, they just come close to you, and then they don't actually attack you. But how do you know that that's going to be the case? The other two outcomes is either the dogs hurt you badly, or you kill the dogs. There is no other way. And I was pretty annoyed, but it was so in two runs across America, I only had 3 incidents, so that's relatively little. But cars, if you are not paying attention, you get killed every day, if you are not looking. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we're very lucky. You've got to have eyes everywhere, and
Yeah.
you can't take your eyes off the road.
Yeah.
You know, if you do, it could be game over so quickly.
Mm-hmm. So other than running, what it is that you do with your life? Tell us a little bit about your world.
I got slammed on the side, so my like three big sort of sets of injuries. One was my pelvis essentially did this and rotated, and I bled out. So my pelvis was busted up pretty badly, and then I had an open tip fracture of the right leg. So I've still got permanent hardware in the right leg and the pelvis, although some screws and wires and other things taken out, which is good. But the third set of injuries, I had a ruptured bowel, so I had a whole heap of internal injuries as well, which people didn't see. And then I developed a horrible infection in hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I subsequently found out that my wife signed a form to amputate my left leg, but the surgeons won that battle, and I still have it, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a tough time with the surgeries and then the recovery, but that's open. All of it's finished now, and I had my last surgery back at Ohio State University Hospital in August last year, and it was a while to go back and reconnect with the incredible surgeons as part of the U.S. health system. I know it was very costly. Fortunately, my insurance came through. Again, an opportunity to reconnect with the wonderful therapists and the nurses, the people, everybody who got me back on my feet, and of course the local community in Columbus that actually took us in, because we had to move the part of the family over to Ohio as well. So we're New Zealanders, but living in Dubai for 12 years. So there are all sorts of logistical nightmares to deal with. And, I have an incredible wife who was able to deal with all of that stress, and so that's the story. So Columbus and Ohio will always have a very, very deep and special place in my heart. Yeah,
very interesting. So
excited about going back.
What are you doing in Dubai?
Yeah, I'm an academic, so I'm a professor in business, particularly marketing and branding, and I work for, my goodness, about 28 years now. So prior to that, I was at New Zealand's one of New Zealand's leading universities in Wellington, which is the capital city, Victoria University, and then after 18 years, wanted an opportunity to see a very, very different part of the world and be extremely culturally challenged.
Couldn't be more different.
No, absolutely. But there's a real buzz and sense of excitement about teaching a class of students where you can have anywhere between up to 60 different nationalities. And has been culturally so enriching. So, my cultural intelligence has changed, drastically in the 12 years that I've been here. And I've loved every minute of it. It's actually coming to an end now. So this is my last semester here, and we'll be returning in a couple of months back to New Zealand. But it's been. It's been an incredible journey. Met some wonderful people, wonderful memories, and it's a very, very diverse part of the world. I think there's this misconception among many countries in the world, including some parts of New Zealand as well. That people tend to lump the countries that comprise the Middle East broadly into one area and think that culturally it's the same or very, very similar, and the truth is very, very different.
Yeah, definitely, yes. I talk to my friends that like to go to the Middle East, and I talk a lot about that because I have my own prejudices and ignorance to deal with, and there are things that I don't like, and I like to ask for their opinion on that. So I say, let me expose you to my preconceived ideas, and you tell me if they are wrong or if they match your experience, and then they give me their feedback, and then later when I go there and I see it for myself, I'll be able to confirm or not, but so there are a few places that I'm curious to at least visit once and take a good look at it, and Dubai is one of those. I feel very connected to several cities. That's the way I think.
Right.
Because you don't live in a country, you live in a city.
Yeah, true. And where are those cities?
Miami, Boston, and I would say in more recent years, Kiev. I have been a lot to Ukraine, and it has been an important part of my recent years. So I feel very at home over there. But I know that in the future I'll be in Scandinavia a lot because of business. So Scandinavia is also growing on me, and that is a very peculiar cultural link between me and Scandinavia, because I have no roots there, but I adopted Scandinavia as a cultural aspect. In this sense, some people, they decide that they are of a different race or they are a different gender for various reasons. Some because they identify with that gender as a consequence, as a downstream from a biological drive to do that, and some people do that for cultural reasons. And I really like a world in which people have the freedom to do it. So if you decide that I am whatever, okay, fine, that's what you are. But then if people can identify as that, some people identify as animals, or they identify, oh no, I am a panda, or I am a unicorn. Fine, you are a unicorn then. So I decide I am a Viking, because Viking is one of, and by Viking I mean between 7th and 12th century. To me, that's one of the most peculiar and interesting cultures that ever came across. And if you ignore all the bad parts of it and you adopt just the funny and interesting ones, it's freaking amazing. And so I in the beginning, I was just joking with my friends, yeah, I'm a Viking. But then, now that I have a lot of friends that are Swedish and Norwegian, I really like to tease them with that. I say, hey, I have to go there to get to know my people. And so to me, it's a joke, but it's also a deliberate decision to adopt some of the stereotypes as if they were true and as if they were my life, because I just find them so entertaining and so interesting. Yeah, in the future I will be a lot in Sweden and Norway, because I need to get to know my people.
You need to go back to your roots.
Back to my roots. That's exactly right. And of course, I read. I don't like Viking movies though. I don't like the fantasy movie genre. It's, I don't know. I don't even like Marvel movies or superhero movies. It's just boring to me. and Viking movies are not exceptional. I try to watch them, and I look at this is
It's not you.
bullshit. No, it's not me. But I love books about it. So recently I read a book called The Edge of the World, in which he tells the history of Europe from 7th century to around 13th century. And the main premise of the book is that the center of the world that he's talking about is the North Sea. And for those people that lived in Europe and in Scandinavia and around it, the North Sea was the middle, because traveling by ocean was safer and easier than traveling by land. Land was full of savages and dangers and animals and predators of all kinds, and which made the trip not just more arduous but more unpredictable. While in the ocean, it's still dangerous. It wasn't easy, but it was more predictable. Coastal navigation was much easier than trying to travel by land in a world without roads. So the North Sea was the space. Like today we look at the map and we see the countries, and the oceans are the space between the countries. At that time, if they had any primitive maps, and they had some, they imagined the ocean as the territory, and the empty areas were the countries. The land was the empty area, because that's where it was difficult to travel. And so all the cities, all the culture was right on the edge of the water, be that oceans or rivers. And that was the environment in which the culture of my people developed, by visiting and trading, and also later predominantly by invading and killing and raping and pillaging everything. And so that was the middle of the world. And then as the history progresses through those centuries, it becomes very evident that they enslaved a significant part of the European population at the time and sold them to the Arabs. So there was this entire trade route that was developed going through Russia, going through the Baltic states, and then creating what later became Kiev, and then
huge international trade.
Going south. Yeah, it was a major trade route, and the most of the trade was slaves. And most of those slaves were from what is today northern Germany, northern France, and the British Isles. So they were selling white slaves, mostly blonde with blue eyes, to the Arabs. And I asked some friends that are very familiar with the history and they have been to the Arab world a lot. I asked them, how come the Arab world is not blonde with blue eyes? Because if they had all those slaves around, I bet they fucked them, And nobody has an explanation to that. How come there was no genetic transfer into that? So maybe they didn't like them, maybe they found them ugly. I don't know what happened, but I never found any good explanation to why that ethnic transfer never mix never happened, apparently, or if it happened, it was very little. But yeah, the history of a lot of people like to point out the history of Europe enslaving other countries, especially the Africans, bringing them to America and all that, and that is significant, but it overshadows the previous history that Europe has of enslaving its own people as well.
Yeah,
it was a horror show.
But it's not often publicly, talked about in any great detail. But I hear what you're saying, and you're right with with the Norwegians, with the Swedes, with the Danish, of course. The Danes.
Yeah, the Danes were brutal, and in fact, even among the Vikings of all the Viking nations, the Danes were the most feared. They were the most.
They had that reputation.
The most brutal of them.
As warlords, yeah.
Yeah, and the contrast is so starking to me when I have been to Sweden recently, and I have been to Denmark before, but they are so, how would I say, they're so intensely civilized and friendly, and it's so difficult to imagine them as being so incredibly aggressive before. Because they're so nice. they're so intensely nice now.
Quite a contrast from many centuries ago.
Exactly. So it is a mental challenge to just even imagine that. I find that fascinating. In some cultures, they celebrate their warrior past, even though they don't practice, but at least they celebrate in their culture. Look at New Zealand with the haka and all the traditions and the music and the tribal expression that they preserve. I don't know how well they're preserved, but I see they do. So that is at least celebrated. And you look at them today, they look like warriors. But then you talk to them, they are the nicest people. They're also intensely nice.
Yeah, it seems a little bit at odds with history, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also New Zealand has some other peculiarities because of the isolation and the absence of natural predators. So almost every animal from there is so defenseless. Like they have animals that don't worry at all about anything. Like, because they evolve for millions of years without any predators. So they are just there, they are not even afraid of you. You can just go there and pick them up. And they presume that after you're done with them, you put them back. Like this.
Have you been to New Zealand before?
No, never been there. I want to go for sure. It's near the top of my list of places that I want to visit. But I want to go by boat. So I don't want to fly. That is a very large list of countries that I want to visit by boat, and that is slightly complicated by the fact that I want to build the boat to make it.
I was going to say, my next question was going to be, what size of boat?
Yeah, that I know. It's 65 footer. That's a 20-meter boat. So it's not a small boat. But I am in the process now of building another one that I need to finish, and then I'll build the big boat to travel. I want to basically travel for the rest of my life on that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and New Zealand is definitely on the list. I'm fascinating with that, and also with the idea of going to Australia. And getting a motorcycle there and doing a ride around Australia. Yeah. I want to go like along the coast all the way around and back and get back on my boat. And
well, you could always run it.
I'm not that surprisingly, I'm not that excited about the idea of running more than a week or two at a time. I did it. I did the thing across America, but it takes how long as it takes. It doesn't matter. But if I was to choose a different adventure to do today, it will probably not be more than a couple weeks long. I did recently in 2016. I did El Camino de Santiago in Spain, and I did the first half. And then I got bored, and I never really set out to do the entire thing. I was more curious about, let's see how it is, and about 1/3 of it, my curiosity was satisfied, and I thought, okay, that's enough. And I feel like doing it again, but strangely, I feel like doing again the first half. I want to repeat the first half. I don't want to. I'm not nearly as curious about the second, because the first half is so beautiful. Because that's the half where you have mountains, and you go through the Pyrenees, and and then around Pamplona is so gorgeous, and then after that it turns a little more flat, and then towards the end it turns into more of a religious thing that doesn't mean anything to me. So if I was going to do it again, I would do the first half again, but I would do it at a different time of the year.
Yeah.
When I did it in June, and it was getting pretty hot during the day. This time, I think I would like to do it during winter. Or I would add a physical challenge to that, like I would do it without any luggage. Like just a little pouch with one extra pair of underwear and a toothbrush, and play by ear. Yeah, I like those ideas a lot better. But definitely, I would make it the first half, because it's so beautiful. Going through the mountains is really special. If you like trail run, that is beautiful. Because also El Camino is too easy. Physically, it's too easy. So you need to add, for a runner like you that is used to long distances and heat and all kind of things, and survive car crash, being hit by cars and stuff like that. So El Camino is way too easy. Or another place that I would love to do a trail across is the Alps. Going from Italy to Switzerland would be really nice.
Be special.
Yeah, that I would definitely do. But that's a 2-week trip. They're not that long. I really don't enjoy being on the same thing for several months.
Yeah, you've done it.
Yeah, done it once, and actually the second one was a pilgrimage. I did it in the spirit of pilgrimage. So I was walking more instead of jogging. I had a backpack instead of a stroller, and I was visiting. I did the same route again, more or less, like 98% the same route. So I was visiting all my friends along the way. I was visiting all the running clubs and all the Hash House Harriers, and and all the places that I knew, and revisiting and talking to friends and camping and looking at the landscape and trying to load with memories a lot more. I was much more focused on building memories and enjoying the situation and thinking about things that I thought I couldn't think enough during the first time. The first time I was a little preoccupied with surviving it and making it to the end and not self-destructing. And of course I had the opportunity to revisit my entire life and think about everything. But the second time I could get a lot deeper into philosophy. I got a lot deeper into what is important in life. I would ask myself questions and spend the next week answering. So for instance,
probably very few runners or walkers across the US. I don't know what to what extent they actually do that. They really get a more profound, deeper understanding of the meaning of life. But I guess that depends on the individual. But what is in your case, you only did it during the second time you did the crossing.
No, I did it in both times, but I would say the level that I could get was much deeper on the second one, because now I removed the part of that challenge. At least I knew that I know how to do it. Like I know the logistics, I know the technique to go. And it's still a challenge, but at the physical part of it was relatively understood. And I could then focus more on being in the moment and take everything that I was thinking about the first time, and I could start from there and then go really deep. Let me tell you one story that illustrates that. One day I was going through a town in New Mexico, one of these little towns, dusty. It is in the desert, so it's a dusty small place. And there was this car parked somewhere, and on the back window, it was like a hatchback, and on the back window, someone drew on the dust. Someone drew an image on the back, like they do with a dusty car. But instead of just being like stick figures, it was something gorgeous. It was an amazing drawing, like art.
Wow!
Really amazing. And I look at that, and I decided to not take a photo. I just look at it. I thought, no, a photo will not do it justice, And actually, I took very few pictures on the second time, because first of all, I grew up most of my life without taking pictures. So this is a new thing, and I think that it's a distraction as much as it is a memory. It helps you preserve some memories, but it also distracts you at the moment. So I didn't take a photo, but I think I stood there for a solid 15 minutes looking at it. And then I was thinking, the person that did it knows that with the first car wash or rain, or even just by driving this car, that gorgeous piece of art is going to be gone. But that person felt that it was worth doing it, right? And so then I was, for the next week or so, I was thinking, what are those things that are worth doing, even knowing that they are not going to last anything? So let me give you an example of that. Imagine that at 80 years old, someone decides to learn to play the piano and fights through the learning curve and the arthritis and everything, and learns and ends up playing the piano, and then drops dead right after that. Okay, was it worth it? That was the question that I was asking myself. So is that worthy of doing, even though it's not going to last at all? And after a lot of thinking, I concluded that the answer is yes. It is worth doing anyway, because there are a small number of things that they pay for themselves. That's the expression I use to explain it. They pay for themselves. Just the process of getting to them is already the reward. So even if you don't take that to any conclusion after it, and those things are knowledge, so I believe that it's worth learning to do something, even if you don't end up using it, or if you learn just for the pleasure of knowing it. And a lot of philosophy falls into that. It's worth doing it anyway, even if you will not teach anyone what you concluded from it. It's still worth doing it. Another one is beauty. All expressions of beauty, and then a lot of art falls into that. Making that beautiful painting on the wall is worth doing it, even if, because of some other factor, someone is going to come up and paint the wall white again. That made me respect some graffiti now, even though it's temporary. And then there are some other things that they also have value on themselves, like family, friendship, the pursuit of happiness. And and then added to that beauty and you know, my list is very short. That's it, you know. So I think that those things, they justify themselves, and all that came from looking at a drawing in the back of a car in the desert. You know. So I had several items like that I thought about. I thought about what to do with the rest of my life. Of course, you know, I put my entire life back into the drawing board, and I think that to some extent every runner across America did it. At least they revised their own attitudes, and they thought about the people they love and the things they want to do. To some extent or another, but to me it was I don't know. I had 8.5 months to do it total. You know, that's a lot of time to think.
Yeah, you know, that's really interesting. It was slightly different for me, because some of the things I got to at a quite deep subconscious level during the run, but I have to say that more of my profound thinking, more of my deep thinking, was probably the first 8 to 10 weeks when I'm lying on my back in hospital, because I can't move my legs, or my pelvis was completely immobilized, and there's only so much of American football on television that you could really stand. No disrespect to American football, but it was on in the room most of the time, and I still have no understanding of it. When I'm on my back,
hey, I live here for 20 years. I still don't understand it.
Oh, that's good.
Don't feel bad.
I found a second person. That's good. I think. The biggest learning point for me with 8 to 10 weeks of not being able to move at all was learning more about and acknowledging more about the importance of gratitude. That was a a profound shift for me in terms of my own behavior. Just taking gratitude really for granted. So one, being more aware of what it means, and number one, number two, being far more aware of the importance of communicating it to particularly to close family and friends. That was really big for me. You're right. Listen to you about comparing your first run with your second crossing. You know how the human body, how your own individual body is going to run. I remember after 80 days or so before the 81st day when I got hit, my body was just like a well-oiled machine. And if it wasn't running, I got cranky. It was like an ongoing drug that I had to fuel. Not quite sure whether you experienced that, but if I wasn't running, if I took a day off, and we made the decision as a team to have that second day off, I got cranky with it.
You get restless.
I really got restless, and yet the support crew were absolutely, right in their observations. That's something I really did learn about, not just about my own human body, but about the importance of listening to others. So what am I saying? I'm saying that there were parts of my run. It was so easy to get self-obsessed with doing the same thing, completing the same mileage, the same kilometers, every single day. And as a result, I remember that, looking back at it now, because I've diaried it all. I've got this phenomenal diary of starting a couple of weeks before the run and right up to being hit the day before, and then reconvening with the diary sort of 2 to 3 weeks later after surgeries. And there's some lovely things in there in terms of the power of learning. There's also some very, very dark times in this diary, which only after 18 months, 2 years, I've actually been capable of not capable of wanting to go back and actually read it again.
Uh-huh.
But that's been really really enlightening. And
I had a privilege of having a friend that she is incredibly wise, because she's very well traveled, and really a person with incredible experiences. Her name is Eden, and she was helping me in prepare and organize the first run. She was one of the few people that believed that I would do it. Because keep in mind, I was a couch potato before I did this. So I wasn't a runner at all. I had no experience. I never ran to the bus, nothing. No. So she was one of the few people that knew that I was stubborn enough to do it, and she helped me train and prepare. And there are several things that I remember her saying that made a huge impact on me. One of those things was that we were discussing the possibility of having a crew to help. And she advised me against that. She said, if you do it, you will run faster and everything, like your performance is going to be amazing. But if you go without a crew, you will have to talk to everyone along the way. The crew isolates you a little from the world. The crew can bring you to a hotel. If you don't have a crew, you will have to crash anywhere you stay. You will have to depend more on the locals. And that will increase your interaction with the locals. And as far as I could see so far, talking to many crossers, I see that this is true. The more support crew you have, the more isolated you are. And the other thing she said was, during the first or second week of the first run, I was talking about, I did this many miles today, and yesterday it was a little less, so I'm improving my speed. And she said, maybe you should go slower. And I said, why? She said, because everyone you meet along the way, this may be the last time you see them. And everything you see, every place you visit, you may never go back again. Keep that in mind. And that had a huge impact, because I was when you are there on the road, you are so emotionally open, so you're much more capable of adopting a new point of view.
I agree with that.
That it had a huge impact on me, and in fact, I never focused too much on performance. Of course, I didn't want to be too slow, because I didn't want to be on the road for 6 months. But I was also not stressing about not being able to be faster. So I tried to find the most economic speed in terms of saving energy through the entire way, and it ended up being 4 months and a bit, like 117 days at the end. But I tell everyone the same thing, and what I'm going to say to you now, I believe you are probably going to understand very well. But the only people that understand it are the runners, the soldiers that have been in combat, survivors of diseases, like people that survive cancer or something like that, and people that have been in major accidents. They understand what I'm going to say. Is that one of the best things that can happen to you, or that you can make it happen to you, is become really aware of your own death. Because if you become aware of how finite your life is, then it's like you're turning up the volume, and every day becomes more intense. Hence the gratitude, right? You will care to tell people that you appreciate them. You will care that when you hug them tighter. You will care that you don't let them go without mentioning, "Hey brother, I love you." "Hey, I appreciate that you met with me," or "I appreciate that you are talking to me." You will do that as a very natural part of your behavior if you understand that every time you talk to someone may be the last one. And I think that I didn't have a traumatic event in my life. Well, I had some, but I was too young and too dumb at that time to really change because of it. But I didn't have in recent years any event that brought me very close face to face with death. But during the first run, I internalized that on purpose. I was always looking at the cars and the road or the desert around me and thinking, what if I die right now? What projects stay unfinished? What it is that I want to do that will not be finished? Or I would think about my stuff and imagine my friends figuring out where my things are and collecting them and distributing them or giving them away. I kept thinking about those things, and that made me so much more aware of my own mortality. And I'll tell you, my life is so much better because of that. Because of that awareness. Was it like that for you?
I think there were, having gone back to my diary recently, there were certainly, for me, there were definitely snippets of that during the run. But I really got a lot more of that. Not just the volume of it, but the depth of it as a result of the accident, and seeing the love and the care and the gratitude, the sincerity and the humility of just people in general. Those things really forced me to wake up. So it was a lot more and a lot deeper after the accident and during that time in hospital, and realizing that what's happened, it's not just having or had an impact on you as a person, but it impacted on so many people around me, both my wife and daughters, my dad, my brother, and a whole heap of close friends that really had no idea within the first really 1 to 2 weeks whether I was actually gonna make it. And then, but you don't hear about. I didn't hear about these stories until later on, and even today, 2.5 years on, I'm still hearing about stories from other people in terms of how they got hold of the news and how it impacted them at a very, very deep emotional level. And that's been incredibly enlightening. So I agree, and again, it comes back to reinforcing the importance of gratitude. Yeah, there's this phrase on, that there's gold in everything, and there's been so much profound learning in terms of what has happened. Learning about myself and my own insecurities, learning about myself in terms of old behaviors, and behaviors have changed as a result of what's happened, and again, acknowledging and appreciating the love and gratitude that is around all of us every single day of our lives. And sometimes we just need a big wake-up call, a big shake to
or you have to create that.
It's there,
you have to create that. Of course, it's much more common that people will understand that after a traumatic experience, after an experience in which you are vulnerable and helpless, and you depend on other people to care for you. That's very humbling and touching, and definitely a lot of people have that.
Yeah, you're right, and you've touched on something that's very, very important there, extremely important, and that is that V word, vulnerability. And it's actually okay to share your vulnerability with other people. It really is profound. I mean, I can recall one situation where I moved out of the main hospital, and I was in Dodd Hall, which is a rehabilitation place, and I still couldn't walk. And my wife, and this is just a testament to her, she would get me into this get undressed, get me into this wheelchair, and she just wheel me into the shower. And that's a really, really vulnerable moment, because you can't stand up and wash yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was an extremely emotional time.
Yeah, and it deepens the connections a lot. Sometimes people say that sex is a very intimate thing to have with someone. I don't think so. That's easy. The intimate thing is asking a question like, does this look infected to you? That is difficult. That requires a really close connection and trust. Saying, can you help me with this? Or someone caring for you. Someone else has to replace your bandages. That is intimate. So that the level of connection that you build up with people that care for you is incredible, and that's why so many people are so intensely grateful and connected to the nurses, because the nurses do the brunt of this work. And now, especially for someone that doesn't have someone that cares for them, like you were fortunate that you had your wife around you and your family. Some people don't have a family. Now the nurse is their family. Have you seen how there are so many stories of people falling in love with their nurses? It's not an accident.
No. And I can understand why that happens.
Yeah. It's not an
Absolutely.
accident. They are caring for you at your most vulnerable.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. As soon as you said that, my mind has just drifted right back to, the of three or four nurses at Ohio State University Hospital, where those deep connections were there every single day. Even when they, walk in first thing in the morning, it would brighten up my day.
Yeah.
And it wasn't scripted. It wasn't mechanical. It was genuine. It was authentic. It came from the heart.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the differences between men and women, is that women are better evolutionarily and biologically. They are more prepared to be nurturers and to care for others. Like while men are better to go to fight the other tribe or something like that. And that is no accident that most nurses are women. Because for them it's easier that connection and that care will be authentic and spontaneous and deep. So it's not an accident, and I think that trying to change that equation to have more male nurses is okay, but it's unnecessary. It's pointless. Having female nurses is awesome because they are awesome at that. They are the ones that are programmed by nature to care for that one that is helpless, which is the kid, right? That same mechanism works perfectly to take care of the elder and the injured. So that it's one of their superpowers, I like to say.
Yeah, one of my big research areas of interest, being a marketing academic, is looking at what I call high performance work practices. It's all about understanding those things that help shape how well a person who, let's say, works as a teller in a bank or a nurse, those people that interact at the coalface with customers. It's been a very strong research area of mine for many, many years. And of course, the role of gender comes out so strongly.
Yeah. And I bet you're also looking at personality profiles, like especially the big five and things like that, because it has such an impact. You want someone for CEO, that person has to be disagreeable. You cannot be CEO or you cannot be a general without being disagreeable, and intensely so. Right? Yeah. And that's why when you get to the level of top CEOs in top companies, they're so disagreeable that a significant number of them are how do you say? The word escaped me. Psychopaths. Significant. Yeah, there is some statistics available that a disproportionate number of CEOs are psychopaths, and politicians at high level of politics, they're psychopaths, and that is a quality necessary to work at that level. To be so driven and so ready to ignore criticism and to be disagreeable and to not show so much empathy, because you need to keep your focus on the mission so much. So you don't get psychopaths to be nurses for the same reason that you don't get someone so nurturing and agreeable to be a politician. It doesn't work. But if you know those factors well, you can correct for when they become weaknesses. Like women have more trouble negotiating higher salaries, for instance. So you need to apply a little correction to that, or you need to apply a little correction. You need to create countermeasures, so you don't end up with the prisons filled with 85% men, and of the 15% that are women, most of them are there because they got entangled with the wrong men. So you, knowing those factors, you can try to correct for them where it makes sense to correct. But let me ask you something that is related to that, in that environment of business and marketing. I wonder how much you guys talk about the fact that you have a distribution in any characteristic, any human characteristic. You have distributions, you have a bell curve in everything, right? So let's say you are talking about being disagreeable. You have a bell curve. If you look at the 1% most disagreeable, they're probably all in jail right now, right? And if you look at the 1% least disagreeable, they are probably all social workers or nurses and mothers, and because they are the ones that are more prepared for that work. But when you look at things like engineering, entrepreneurship, and business, especially like startups, I think that those areas are disproportionately benefited by outliers. The person that are really the freaks, the crazies, the misfits.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you look at the inventions and the people that did the most amazing technological or business inventions, a lot of them are people that you couldn't take to a party or invite to meet your family. They were too out there. I like an expression by Eric Weinstein. He said that not just we are standing on the shoulders of giants, we are also standing on the shoulders of jerks. A lot of these greatest scientists and inventors and business people, they are horrible. They are horrible people, but they need to be that way. That it's part of the mix-up that makes their brain capable of creating an Apple, of creating a Tesla. Or you cannot get the genius without getting the weird guy along with it.
Yeah.
I was reading the other day about one of my heroes, which was Steve Jobs, right?
I was going to bring out Steve Jobs.
And Steve Jobs, if you look at the way he treated some of his friends, and especially the way he treated the first daughter, he was a monster. The guy was horrible, okay? But that is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin made it possible for him to create what he created, and there is no way to separate that, to separate those two parts and correct only one side. There is no way. And I see the same in people that I admire the most, some of the scientists. Look at Feynman. Feynman was notorious. There are others that were even more notorious for that. I'm just not familiar with their names. But to me, Feynman was one of those. Another one is another of my heroes, Elon Musk. Elon Musk is difficult to deal with. But to me, he's a real life superhero. But the best thing that can happen to you is work for him. The worst thing that can happen to you is work for him. It's brutal, right? It's brutal. People that are around him, a lot of them say the same thing. Oh, it was the best experience of my life. I would never do that again.
Yeah. But they probably would.
They probably would. A lot of them would, but a lot of them report that it's too exhausting. Very few people have the level of energy and stamina to be around him.
Yeah.
So he first of all, apparently the guy, the quantity of work It's not just the intensity, but the quantity of work is incredible. You know, it's unhealthy at the least, right? But he can do it, and then people working around him try to do it. They try to catch up, and they fail, right? They fail. They get sick. They get divorced. You know, all kinds of things happen to them if they try to keep up. And so, but we need this kind of people. We need more of them. Yeah. And when you look at companies, I look at their hiring practices. And the hiring practices of companies are designed to exclude those people. They're designed to bring a homogeneous number of engineers and administrators, and that are going to work well in teams. You know, they say, "Are you a good team player?" Well, of course you need a lot of good team players, but you need a few people that are not good team players. You need to add them to the mix. Yep. You need to have a few people that you have to, that more than an introduction, they need an explanation. You know, you have to bring in the team and say, look, this guy is going to piss you off. All right? But this is why we are bringing him in. You know, the benefit to the creation, to the dynamism of the group can be enormous if you give him enough room. If you don't get offended by the shit that he's going to say, you know. Like I know a guy that he's a brilliant software developer. I know him in person. He used to live in the same city. And he tried to work at a company where I used to work. And he has Tourette's, right? He has tics, and you cannot bring him to a meeting, right? It's too embarrassing, right? He creates all kinds of troubles and offends people and insults them and all that. And he's one of the most brilliant software developers I ever saw. You know, and we are living in a society that still doesn't know how to deal with these people. You know, we have them in schools and they don't learn well. They are brilliant. They can do incredible things. But because they cannot get straight A's, we call that a learning disorder. You know, and they get into the company and they create all kinds of troubles and amazing products, and they create the solutions, and they write some of the most impressive books about how to solve the problems. And then we fire them because we cannot show them in public.
Yeah, you're right. We have a way in which the world should look, and the way in which the world, should function. And if you're not in that mainstream, you're right. You tend to be pushed aside or discarded or labeled, or as a stereotype.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. But the world clearly needs outliers to function.
Yeah.
A
couple years ago, I was in a different financial situation, and I was considering doing some contractor work in software development because it's very well paid. I would solve my financial problems with one contract, you know. And for a little while, I contact some companies, and I talk to my friends that are software developers, and they all introduce me to their managers or to their hiring officers to talk to them. And none of them wanted to interview me. And some of them actually extracted the answer from them. Why is it that it didn't go ahead? And most of them was that, well, this guy has been independent and working freelance for years, you know, so we cannot put him in a team and send him to a company. You know, it's too complicated, and it doesn't work well. So basically I became unemployable. And I mean, I could squeak in. If I bullshit enough, I could squeak in and get into a contractor firm. But I couldn't do that by not pretending to be someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll pick it up
and I
quickly, sure.
think it's pretty bad. It's bad for me and it's bad for them. You know? And if you read my book, you are going to see some of it. I had a friend very generously. Very kindly, she offered to edit it for me, and and several times she said, "Are you sure you want to keep this here? Like, this is at least you're going to offend a number of people with this, you know, like or it's going to frame you, it's going to put you on a little square, you know, like you're building a pigeonhole and filling it up with pigeon just by writing this, you know." And in many of those cases, I thought about it and I say, yeah, leave it there. So you'll see that my book is full of insults and offenses and criticism that are hard to defend, and some of it that it is sincere. Like, I reread my book 5 years after I wrote it. I read it again, and I didn't disagree with any of it. In a few things, maybe I would improve the way that I explain it, but I prefer to maintain the way that I did it at the time that I was thinking it while I was on the road, when I was under that emotional load. So I decided to leave it, but definitely it makes possibly difficult reading, and I would love to hear your opinions about it if you decide to read that.
Yeah, thanks.
And I don't blame you if you decide to not finish. Don't blame you. A lot of people that I know, they read the beginning.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people that I know.
That was it.
And that was it. They read the first 1/3 of it or so, and
no, I'm gonna.
That was it.
Yeah. I'll be going back.
Yeah. So on this issue of the outliers, how much is the academic world aware of that? Or are you guys still trying to filter out the freaks?
Oh, what a question. I think if you'd answered that question, or answered that question 10, 15 years ago, the answer would be different. I think back then, there's no question about it. As far as conventional,
let me interrupt you. You came out of focus. Can you approach the camera and move back in focus? All right.
I was going to say, mainstream business education 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, we were, no question, purely, in my view, purely and only focusing on that middle in terms of the bell curve that you're referring to. Outliers. Mm-hmm. They were largely cast aside or were redirected to some other form of education, typically out of the university system. All those individuals were, frankly, they were dropped, they were discarded, or they made the decision to leave the university themselves. I think today it's got a lot better, largely because, not in all cases, but I would say that in the majority of the top universities in the world, they have recognized the importance of bringing in these outliers, into the mainstream business curriculum, and I think technology has played a huge role in that, making it happen. So I think it's changed. I think it's changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. I'm
so happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, universities have embraced technology parks and business startups. They've got into the incubation space, and as a result of doing that, they've increasingly had to embrace the softer skills, and so the role of intelligence, the role of cultural intelligence is becoming increasingly important. So I think they've still got a long way to go, but in my view, they've acknowledged the importance of it and made changes and have got better at it. But definitely an upward, relative to 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I'm dealing a lot with because I run a startup. I have a lot of contact with investors and people that are in the financial world, and they are so much more open-minded about it. They are so ready to listen to some weird conversations because they see the potential for opportunities there. Of course, they don't want you to be so dysfunctional that they cannot work with you, but they are willing to accept a lot of dysfunction to see something actually work out. And I'm not just talking about someone being autistic or such a genius that the person doesn't talk too much or beautiful mind scenario, John Nash in Hollywood movie. No, they are willing to accept people that are alcoholics and drug abuse and all kinds of weird lifestyles, because they are so focused on trying to see the talent behind it, and but that's very natural to the investment world. And if you ever had any contact with Wall Street, and I had a little while I was in Boston, I kept going to New York, and I had friends that worked in Wall Street, and so I used to go to their parties and talk to them and all that. It's a freak show. It's these brokers and financial guys, they are weird. I'll tell you, it's weird. It's a psychopaths and crazies and drug abuse and chauvinism, and it's the list goes on and on and on. But if you want to make money in Wall Street, they are the way. They are the ones that know how to do it. Did you see that movie, The Big Short?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you have to watch it. The genius guy, and I watch interviews with him. Like talking interviews, it doesn't sound as crazy as it shows in the movie. But reading about it, you realize that the movie is kind of correct. He's kind of that kind of crazy. Really an isolated guy that had his own idea, but he stood up alone while everybody else was saying he was wrong. That's a very interesting thing. He noticed the bubble in the real estate market pretty much before anybody else, and so he bet against the market before anybody else. And the consequences are enormous, of course, because he was correct. But he is like, I think that if he wasn't there and making that kind of money and all that, he would be, I don't know, he would be unloading trucks in Transylvania. I don't know what he would be doing, because nobody would hire a guy like that, But he found a way. Yeah, he found a market for that. So the moment that I knew that you were in this link, in this intersection between academic world and the marketing world, I thought you're the one to ask this.
I mean, the other thing with which is relevant to the comments that you're making as well. In traditional academia, academics are assessed on criteria that really have, I'm going to go out on a limb here, have very little relevance to the real practical world. Academics, as far as promotion are concerned, it's largely based on research publication, and there are there are a set of journals, top tier journals in the world, that really dictate our promotion's chances. And academics generally, and business is no exception. It's relevant to other disciplines as well. We're often criticized for generating strong academic research, theoretical research, which has very little or no practical relevance whatsoever. So, this debate was around 20, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, is that there's often a misalignment between what research universities generate, but how they assist, how they aid, how they make managerial decision-making better in practice. And sadly, in my view, in the 25 years that I've been in, 28 years that I've been in this game now, I think it's actually got worse, not better.
Uh-huh.
A lot of business, particularly a lot of corporate business, is really, well, some corporate businesses have raised the issue that universities are in a state of crisis, because what they're teaching and what they're researching is largely irrelevant and dates very, very quickly. And universities are in this constant catch-up mode with what is actually taking place in practice. So it's very, very interesting times now, and particularly in light of the coronavirus, where pretty much majority of universities worldwide, there are some exceptions, but having to deliver classes online, and that's presenting another
right. Yeah. Did you? I don't know if you saw anything about the creator of Zoom. He's a very interesting guy. He was denied entry to US several times, and he couldn't visit his girlfriend, so he wrote this program to talk to her, and that's what we are using now. I think his stock is worth several $1 billion out of a sudden. So another weird situation, right? Another weird case.
The great examples of disruptors. These are disruptors.
Yeah. A lot of these people are, if you think of some of the most brilliant people in the world that are actually making things happen, a lot of them couldn't get a visa to get into America today.
Yeah.
Because the visa process is just like hiring process. It was designed to filter in people that are well employed, or that they have a nice, beautiful resume that they can, like you can bring an engineer to US if he has the correct diploma, he graduated school, and he has this and this and this academic achievements, and you can bring him. But if he is a freaking genius, there's no way to hire the guy. There's no way to bring him in. Because the system is designed to keep him out, and that is at least misguided, and in reality I really think it's pretty dumb. Yeah. Cool. Nick, this has been amazing, man, and I feel that we should do another talk. Because as soon as I turn off the recording and I go do my breakfast, I will think, oh no, I forgot to talk about this thing.
No problem. I'd be delighted to reconnect with you. Definitely.
Yeah, we have to do that a little more. And one day I'll visit you in New Zealand on my boat, for sure.
Hopefully, when have clearance to fly, and I can actually get back into the country, or more importantly, I can actually leave the United Arab Emirates, because that's not the moment. Then, if ever you visit, it'll be great to host you.
Yes, and I'm telling most people that I'm talking to on podcasts, and in your case for sure, wherever I am, you are welcome. All right. So definitely looking forward to the next one, and thank you so much for this, man.
Hey, my pleasure. Enjoy your breakfast.
All right, thank you so much.
We hope you like this podcast as much as we like to produce it. This has been made possible by the efforts of dozens of volunteers, supporters, partners, and visionaries that are helping us build Forager's World. Please visit our website,